All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Tonight I have Rob Cornilles. Did I say that right?
You said it better than me.
Okay, good. He is an international best-selling author, #1 sales leadership trainer, podcast host, founder and CEO of GameFace Inc. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks. It's really good to finally get together, Keisha and Nicole. We've been talking about this for some time, so I'm really thrilled to spend some time with you tonight.
Same here. I know it's just been busy, but
Yep.
we made it. So I'm going to start by asking you, what is your superpower and when did you discover it?
Oh my goodness. Boy, my superpower. I wish I had one, but I'll do my best to make one up. I guess my superpower is I have the ability to make a Japanese meal that blows everybody away.
Really?
Yep. Now it's not sushi. It's cooked, all right, which is important. But I make a mean sukiyaki. And I don't know if you've ever had sukiyaki before, Keisha, but it's my favorite meal. And I don't cook much of anything except maybe a good burnt piece of toast and maybe some dry cereal. But when you put me at a sukiyaki table, I become a Superman. And I've never had one person who I've served it to ever say that it wasn't one of their favorite meals. Now, is that immodest or what?
Listen, I love Asian food, so I'm gonna have to look that up because if I haven't tried it, I need to try it.
There you go. Well, actually, if you're going to try it, you just need to give me a call. We'll get together. Okay.
Yes, you can make it for me.
There you go. I'd love to get some of your friends and guests together and just let me be your chef.
Awesome.
But that's the only thing I cook. So that's why I call it a superpower. It's probably not what you wanted me to say, but I surprise everybody, especially my wife, who usually tells me to get out of the kitchen. So
no, that's a superpower. If you do nothing else in the kitchen and you can go in there and pop that out.
There you go.
That has to
Okay.
be. So what was your first real job? What did you love about it? And what did you hate? And from that job, do you still use something that you did then today? Like, is there one thing that you remember, like, dag, I learned this from that job and I still kind of, apply it somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. There are actually two jobs that I did simultaneously when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
This was normally in the summertime. So I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, in the state of Oregon. It's very lush there, as you may know, very green. Things grow quickly. So I mowed lawns and I delivered papers. So I delivered papers. Back then, the paper was delivered in the afternoon. One of the big newspapers, the second largest newspaper in the city of Portland, Oregon. But during the mornings, I would mow people's lawns, and then I would get on my bike and deliver newspapers. So what it taught me there, Keisha, is a couple of things. First of all, I had to be very independent. I could not rely on other people to, open up the shop, so to speak. I had to be on time, and I had to keep a schedule. So learning that quality of independence, of self-starterness, if you will, was absolutely critical for me as I grew older and accepted other positions of responsibility, and eventually when I started my own business. So it's interesting. This is not what you've asked me, but I've always asked. I like to ask the question of people, of all the athletes, all the positions in sports, which is the one that you think lends itself best towards entrepreneurship?
Mm-hmm.
And, people might say, oh, I don't know, a quarterback or, maybe a point guard in basketball. My observation, Keisha, is that it's the pitcher on a baseball team, because the pitcher really is out there on the mound all by themselves. Everyone's staring at them. Their teammates are waiting for them to perform. If they screw it up, the teammates are going to lose, right? If they throw a bad pitch, one bad pitch can ruin the whole game.
Hmm.
And they have no one else to blame for how they throw a pitch, right? So in the similar manner, when I was delivering papers and mowing people's lawns and literally shuffling my lawnmower down the street, one house after another, going door to door, asking them if I could mow their lawn, it was all on me. And I'm afraid that's a characteristic or a quality that we're not really raising our kids to appreciate and understand anymore. I'm grateful I had that opportunity in my youth.
Okay. So was there anything that you didn't like about those jobs? Wanted the money, so you did it, but was there anything?
Well, I didn't like the heat. Out in the summertime, I'd rather be in the pool or, standing by the hose where my friends were, running through the sprinklers. So yeah, that was hard to get out there in the heat as a young boy. And so once again, I just learned perseverance.
Right.
I learned that there's a reward at the end of hard work. And my reward could be the sprinkler. My reward could be a dip in the pool, or, a lemonade or an ice cream cone. But I always, I'd have that kind of that private audience of something I'm looking forward to when this is over. Even, when this day is over, I get to go home and have an ice cream cone or an ice cream sandwich or a popsicle. And so I was always working towards that. And that just kind of drove me through the day. And of course, as we grow older, those prizes become a little bit more significant, a little bit more expensive. And it doesn't have to be something that we buy ourselves. It could just be time with our family,
Right.
time with our friends. It's coming tonight when I get my job done. So I think that lesson of putting in an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and there's a reward at the end, was something I learned in those two first jobs.
Okay. So were you always an entrepreneur? Like, did you start your professional career as an entrepreneur, or were you working in corporate America and then decided to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I've discovered over time that I had it in my veins. My grandfather, who was definitely my mentor, was an entrepreneur, didn't graduate from university, never even went to university. He barely got a high school degree. He had to feed his mom and his two older sisters because his father was not a breadwinner. And in fact, his father passed away fairly early. So as a young boy, he said, okay, my responsibility is to care for the family. So I think I inherited that, like I say, that notion of responsibility and duty. My own father was an attorney, which, if you think about it, is quite entrepreneurial, because you got to go out and get business, you got to find clients, your name's on the door. But I didn't recognize that trait in myself initially. I did start, I guess you could say it was corporate America, because I was floating around with a couple of odd and end jobs after college. One of those, in fact, was in Japan, Keisha. That's where I learned to make that sukiyaki I talked about. But then I also took a job working for an NBA basketball team as a salesperson, selling tickets. And again, I didn't really consider it at the time, but that was very entrepreneurial, because in sales, again, it's, no one's going to do it for you. You got to get up, you got to make the phone calls, you got to do the follow-up, all those kinds of things on your own. But that was my first job into corporate America, and kind of taught me what that was all about. But quickly after that position, I realized that I had some entrepreneurial tendencies that I needed to pursue.
Okay, so tell us about your business.
Well, yeah, Game Face Incorporated started in 1995, and it was the result of my work at the LA Clippers basketball team back in the early 90s. I don't know how many of your fans and followers, Keisha, follow basketball, but back in the early 1990s, the Los Angeles Clippers were the worst franchise ever. In fact, Sports Illustrated called them the worst franchise in the history of sports. And yet I took the job. This shows you how crazy and maybe a little off my rocker I am. I took the job selling tickets for them, as a commission only salesperson, by the way. So obviously not very bright. As I say in the book that I wrote, I'm not the brightest bulb in the Jumbotron. But in doing that, I recognized that if I just tried to sell, the product, that no one would believe me. And why should they? We have no history of success or winning. Why not just go across town to everyone's favorite LA Lakers, where they're constantly winning championships, and it's showtime, as they used to call it. But I finally found some success selling a very difficult product. It's not because I found a way to trick people or to deceive people, but I found a different way of selling an unsellable product. And that then parlayed into starting a consulting business where I was sharing with other sports teams kind of my discovery, and my formula, my methodology. And so GameFace began. At first, nobody really thought they needed what I did, which was sales training for sports teams. But the more I began to see success with a few of my early adopters, the more the word spread quickly around the sports industry. And now GameFace sales training is kind of a staple in the sports business. We invented the category of sales training for sports. And since then, that was 1995, as I said, over the years, now over the decades, we've branched out and we perform sales training, sales consulting, and leadership training for companies of all stripes and sizes.
Okay. So what do you do to overcome struggles as an entrepreneur?
I try to surround myself with smarter people than me. And usually entrepreneurs begin a company or they invent something. And this is not a criticism. This is just, I think, a fact, frankly. They kind of start to read their own press clippings like they are the smartest person in the room. After all, they're the inventor. They're the innovator, right? They're the one with the vision. What I learned fairly quickly, but kind of the hard way, because even though my business took off quickly, in our rapid growth, I made some mistakes. And so what I realized over time is that when I'm struggling, I need to recognize that there are blind spots in Rob Cornilles. And I've got to find people who can identify those blind spots for me and cover for me. And so whether it's someone straight out of college, whether it's an intern, or whether it's a seasoned veteran of business, find people who know things you don't know, who cover those blind spots, and embrace them and welcome them and humbly accept their thoughts and advice.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think that's really good. So what do you love about sales? Like what makes you feel like, I don't know if it makes you warm and fuzzy inside, but like, what do you think about that whole salesy things? Because sales terrify me.
Well, I think that's the thing I love about it, is that when we work with clients, whether they be big enterprise companies or startups or just individual salespeople who want to get their own coaching, what I love about it, the job that I have, is that I'm able to take that terrible stereotype that we've all grown up with, that sales is sleazy, slimy, shady, slick, sneaky, and sly. And I turn that on its head. I help people understand that when sales is done right, it's not a transaction. Sales is a way of influencing, of persuading, of motivating, of inspiring, and certainly of educating people in a way that will improve their circumstance, whether it be their job, their home, their career, their livelihood, their movie theater, in the basement of their house, the meal that they're having. If you learn how to sell the right way, and you can put aside those stereotypical approaches, those techniques and tactics that make you a trickster,
Mm.
And you can learn how to interact with people in a way that feels good to them and that feels intuitive to both parties. Because I think we were born to engage and communicate with one another and to accept one another and to frankly benefit one another. I think that's the purpose of life. So if you can learn how to do that in a business setting, whether it be for the nonprofit organization you work for or for a company you work for, it's transformational. And as I say on the cover of my book, it's game changing. And so that's what I love about sales. When it's done right, it's transformational and game changing. And I love to teach people how to sell in a way that they don't have to feel like I got to go take a shower every day after work because I feel so dirty.
Right. So as a teacher, why do you think some people are really good at sales and others are not?
Well, there are many answers, I think, to that question. It's a great question, by the way, as have been all of your questions.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, but first of all, some people are not a good salespeople because they don't understand the essence of selling.
Mm.
They think it is spin. They think it is outfoxing the other side. They think it is I win and you lose negotiation. So when they go into the profession, and most of us go into sales not intentionally, right? No, very few of us grew up around the dining room table telling mom and dad, "Hey, I'm going to be in sales when I get older." Right? If you said that to your parents, they'd send you to your room. Right? So instead, when people get into sales and they have the wrong impression as to what it is, they're already putting themselves at a disadvantage. The people who are really good at sales aren't necessarily those who are the most outgoing or vivacious or best talkers. Selling is actually for people who are the best listeners. And if you don't, and yet you can't listen, I would add, unless the other person is talking. So how do you get the other party to talk, especially when you called them unexpectedly? They didn't ask for your solicitation. So how do you get them to open up and share and to reveal? And so the people who know how to do that, and then they're not just listening for key words, they're not listening for buying signals. They're listening to understand needs, yes, preferences, which are wants and wishes. They're listening to understand time frame, and they're listening to understand someone's ability to invest or their history of investing in product or services. If you listen to those things carefully, then it's a natural extension to then say, I would like to recommend something for you. I have a suggestion that I think your family will enjoy. I have a recommendation that can actually do wonders for your business. And it's fully justifiable. And the reason why it's justifiable is because you just shared something with me that makes my product or service a no-brainer. So there are so many more ways I could answer your question, Keisha. You're really, it encompasses our workshops and our consulting. But that, I think, from a 30,000-foot view is what makes great salespeople great and most people mediocre or former salespeople because they're not having success at it.
Right. They're doing too much talking and they're not listening at all. Do you think you can turn anyone into a selling machine, or do you think there are certain skill sets you need to have? And if you don't have those, then it's like, ooh, this is not going to work.
No, I can teach skill set. What I can't teach is attitude. Nor can I teach work ethic.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the truth about attitude and work ethic. If you have more skills, it's amazing what that does to your attitude. If you have more skills, it's amazing how you want to work harder and work more, longer hours. Why? Because you feel armed to do so. You bring confidence to your work every day. So I don't focus on motivation, right? I'm not a rah-rah speaker, which I affectionately refer to as cotton candy speakers. when they speak, it tastes so good. It's all that saccharin, right? But then when they're done, you're still empty inside. You got this sugar high, but when you leave the convention, you still don't know how to prospect effectively. You don't know how to get through to gatekeepers or how to have a substantive conversation with the decision maker. So I'm not a cotton candy speaker. I bring meat and potatoes, right? I give them skills. And when they have those skills, in most cases, which they never thought they could acquire, it's amazing how they love their job now. It's amazing how they can't wait to go to work tomorrow. And so, yeah, I can teach anyone to be a game-changing salesperson, but they've got to have the right attitude. Like, they've got to be coachable, and then they have to be willing to put in the practice, the repetitions, if you will, as we say in athletics, in order to turn that technique into a mastered skill.
Okay. So I was going to ask this question, but I think you kind of answered it with the last question, but if there's anything else you want to add, you can. So the question is, what is special about the way you coach, and what do you think people need that your program is able to deliver on? So I think you did say some of that, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think there's one important thing I would add. And again, I appreciate your question. The stereotypical sales training out there in corporate America is typically filled with product training. So if you join the company, Keisha, whatever it may be, and you're in sales, they're going to send you over, down the hall to the training room for 3 or 4 or 5 days. And ostensibly what they're going to do is train you in your products. So you are a master, you're an expert in your product line. And that's important. Don't get me wrong. What I do is I say, learn your product, but then don't sell it. And people will say, what? What do you mean don't sell it? I'm really good at my product now. I know it backwards and forwards. I say this, don't sell the product, because every product is objectionable to a prospect. Instead, sell the results your product brings the prospect, because the results are attractive. The results are appealing. The results are desirable. I didn't wake up today saying, boy, I hope I can find an XYZ product. Where is that WXYZ widget I've been looking for? What we do wake up with every day is a desire to accomplish a result. Whether it's, I hope to have more peace of mind. I hope to have better relationships with my colleagues or my significant other. I hope to have more peace in my life. I hope to have more security. I want to have more convenience. I want more simplicity. Those are examples of a myriad of results that everybody wakes up hoping for. And some are stronger than others, mind you. And what I say to my clients is, find the result your product or service delivers to your target audience and talk about that. Once you've agreed on the result that's important to them that your product can actually deliver, then introduce the product. But most of us in sales do the opposite. We call up and want to pitch. Let me pitch you my product. I'm really good at it. I got a 30-second elevator pitch. Are you ready? And the person's going, I don't want this product. And then we lose the opportunity to make a sale. But if I started off talking about the results the product delivers for a family like yours, for a company like yours, for an executive like you, for a single person like you, now you're thinking, wow, you're talking my language. How did you know that's desirable to me? Tell me more. What are you talking about? What exactly do you mean by that? And now the salesperson has received an invitation to continue. And that's how you make sales simple.
I love it. And with that being said, I'd just like to say that this episode is being brought to you by Bent Beauty. I'm wearing one of their lipsticks. And it's beautiful, isn't it, guys? So if you want to check out Bent Beauty, go to shopbentbeauty.com. Now, back to Rob. When you decided to write a book, what was the key message that you wanted to share with readers?
That everybody, no matter what you do in life, performs sales every day. because every day you are trying to influence a child, a fiance, a mother-in-law. You are trying to persuade a boss, a colleague, a prospect, a customer, someone who's looking to hire you, perhaps.
Yes.
The person at the bank where you're trying to get a loan. You are in the business of persuading and influencing and educating and inspiring every single day. I don't care if you're an accountant. I don't care if you're a podcaster. I don't care if you work on construction sites. So what I say is, since everybody has a sales role to play, learn how to do it better. You'll be happier, you will be more successful, and you'll find better relationships along the way throughout your life. So when someone says, well, who's your book for? You know, most publishers don't like it when I say this. And I had several publishers who said, you shouldn't say that, until I found the one who finally got it. And then it became an international bestseller. I say when they say, who's your audience? I say, everybody. No, you can't have everybody. No, you got to target, right? You got to decide on a niche. And I said, no, everybody's in sales, and I'm going to prove it. And that's what the sales game changer does.
That is so true, though. Everything you just said, like, we're always selling, whether we realize it or not, right? Or influencing, as you say. So what is the biggest missing skill that you see in most leaders? Because you coach leaders too, right?
I do.
So the biggest missing skill that you see in most leaders that keep them from being effective leaders, and why do you think they get to leadership roles without this skill?
Wow, that is another bullseye question.
Mm-hmm.
I love the last part of your question, Keisha. How do they, in spite of that, how do they get to that level of leadership? So it probably goes back to what I said early, which is most people become leaders, whether in business or a nonprofit organization or a community or in politics, because they're really good at something. They stand out with a particular skill or attribute. They're charismatic, they're a great communicator, they're very articulate and persuasive, or they're terrific as an inventor, they're very innovative. But what I find that what happens along the way is that they lose, and sometimes never even think to develop, the skill of listening.
Mm.
And when I say listening, there are 5 ways to listen. And by the way, I always give credit where it's due. In my book, I talk about the 5 ways of listening, but I attribute them to the person who taught them to me, which is Dr. Stephen R. Covey. And he's someone that I knew before he passed away several years ago, unfortunately, due to a terrible bicycle accident. But his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is one of the all-time greatest selling business books. And in that book, he talks about listening. And so what I've done is I've kind of, I won't say modernized it, but I've taken his concept, which is almost doctrinal as far as I'm concerned, and I've tried to apply it in a broader sense to the people that I work with. So when I talk about listening, this is what I mean. Most of us listen to respond. In other words, you ask me a question or you make a statement, and before you even finish, I'm forming my answer. I'm forming my response. I'm not listening to your question or statement in its entirety. If you want to see a good example of this, just watch cable news shows where they don't let each other finish their sentences.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I teach people, you don't listen to respond, you listen to understand. What does that mean? That means that even though you may have a hunch as to what their purpose or what their intent is, you listen and clarify to ensure that you're clear on that intent. And there are various ways to clarify. But just to summarize, great leaders are those who will listen to even the receptionist, even the, if I can use the stereotypical term, even the mail boy, the truck driver. They will listen to those people who have perspective and insight and experience that the CEO probably doesn't have, because they may be, respectfully speaking, in their ivory tower, or because they have blinders on as the CEO. When you listen to those other people empathically, clarifying continuously, it totally expands your horizon. It broadens your view of your own brand and how it's being perceived, its strengths and weaknesses, and that accelerates, it catapults your success to a whole new level.
Love it. Okay. So persuasion is an art. Do you have to be dishonest to be persuasive? Because it seems like the most persuasive people are selling you dreams. So what's the secret? We want to know, Rob.
Well, I don't think you have to be dishonest to be persuasive, but I think you're right. Many people are deceptive, disingenuous, maybe I'll use those words, as a means to be persuasive. Here's how I view it. In the end, they're going to get found out, right? They're going to be discovered as an imposter or as a deceiver. They may have an audience for a time. And for those of us who try to do things the right way, it's frustrating to us when we see their rapid rise, right? But we could name celebrity after celebrity, influencer after influencer on Instagram, who they reached the peak, but now you can't even find them anymore, right? But we won't name names. Those people who are consistently influential and persuasive, I believe, are those people who have they're not fully transparently honest, because sometimes that's inappropriate. So, for example, you might say to me right now, if you were to be completely transparent with me, Keisha, you would say, Rob, I don't like your shirt.
I like
it. But that would be inappropriate, right? There's no reason to say that to me. And you could say, well, Rob, I'm just being honest. And I would say, well, you don't need to be that honest.
Right.
So it's finding a balance. It's finding what's appropriate. It's a social moray to find that balance. And so I've had this saying in my office. It's been printed on the wall for nearly 25 years. And it goes like this: do the right things long enough consistently, and success will follow. Do the right things, and honesty is the right thing. Yeah. Do the right things long enough, meaning do it over time. You can't just do it for a month. I'm going to try honesty for a month. And you got to do it consistently with every person you talk to, not just every other person, not just people who share the C-suite titles with you. You got to do it with everybody. And again, there are levels of transparency and disclosure that are appropriate and maybe not so appropriate. There's timing is an important part in this as well, but that takes good judgment, right? So hopefully you've got good judgment. Can I share with you a story, Keisha, about honesty?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my grandfather, who passed away about 7 years ago now. And my grandfather taught me a story when he was running his own company. He was looking to hire someone to fill a particular position. And he was talking to a friend who was in his office one day. And my grandfather's name was Tom. And let's just call his friend Charlie. He said, Charlie, I'm looking to fill this position. I'm thinking of hiring Hank. And Charlie knew Hank. And he says, so Charlie, you know Hank pretty well. I'm thinking about him. Tell me, Tom asked, is he pretty honest? And Charlie gave Tom a quizzical look, and he leaned across Tom's desk and he said, Tom, what do you mean pretty honest? End of story. What do you mean pretty? You can't be pretty honest.
Right.
Right? You either are or you aren't.
Yeah, for sure.
So I encourage people, be honest. In the end, I think you'll receive your reward, but also use good judgment as to how far you go in disclosure and transparency, because some things can be hurtful and unnecessary.
Right. Yes. Love it. So what tips would you give to someone who is just starting out in sales, but they don't have the it factor that most salespeople are born with? Because I feel like salespeople sometimes are really born with that sales Like you're out there as a kid, freaking doing paper routes and going door to door and lawn mowing. Like I don't even talk to my neighbors. I mean, I do, but I'm kind of like, hi, bye, you know? So what advice would you give to someone who is in sales, but they're just a little, they haven't discovered themselves yet?
So we'll already assume they're buying my book, right, Keisha?
Yeah, should definitely do that.
Okay, so we're assuming they've got my book available on Amazon, but let's give you two answers to that. First, find something in everybody you meet that you love. Find something about them that you love. I'll give you an example. Keisha, you and I know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
I love your interest in people.
Oh, thanks.
I do. It's
Yeah.
contagious. It's commendable. It's admirable. And that's not the only thing. I'm sure when we spend more time together, I'll find other things about you I love. It could be your smile, which is also awesome, right? Your personality. It could be your drive. It could be your background. I say to people, find something, develop the discipline to find something about everybody you meet that you love, right? I love the way they treat their spouse. I love the way they talk. I love the way they dress. Just find something. So if you do that, if you develop that habit, you will enjoy people more, because that's kind of the first rule of sales. If you don't like people, you're probably going to be a very cynical salesperson.
Yes, if you don't like people, sales is an oh hell no for you. Okay?
Yeah, that's right. I wish I would have thought of that line. That's right. And the second thing I would say is, when you're starting out in sales, is find other people who are successful at it, especially if they're in the company that you're working for or in the industry. And whether, if you can take them out to breakfast, which is a really cheap meal. When you're new in sales, you can only afford a bagel and a cup of coffee. So take them out to breakfast and say, I'd like to learn from you the 5 biggest hurdles you overcame to achieve your success. Maybe it's the 5 toughest objections you overcame from prospects or customers, or the five lessons you learned from your bosses over the years that you followed and took you where you are today. So, reach out to those people who you admire, who you'd like to be like, who you'd like to emulate, and find out what got them there. And I like to say, not fake it till you make it. I like to say, emulate it till you make it. Okay. Emulate the people that are what you want to be, and it's amazing how quickly you'll get there.
Nice. So do you feel like you are doing purpose-driven work?
Well, I do, Keisha, and I hope that's not a boastful answer, but I certainly do, because at the end of my time with a client, someone that I'm training or consulting with, I would often hear statements like this: I was going to give up on sales, and now this is my life's calling. Or I was making nothing before I went through your training, and now I'm leading the board in my office. Or I was afraid to talk to people, to make calls, to make cold calls. I was afraid to tackle some of the biggest prospects in my market, but now I can't wait to get in the door with them, because I've got the skills that I need, that's given me confidence and competency, that I can stand toe to toe with them, not in a battle, but I belong in the room, to use the line from Hamilton. And so to be able to hear that day after day is so gratifying. And it makes me think, hey, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. If I can give people that kind of hope and that kind of success in their life, which benefits their family, benefits their future family, their posterity, puts them in a better position to contribute to their community. And that's just, like I say, very gratifying.
Yeah, absolutely. So On the Oh Hell No podcast, I always ask my guests to share an Oh Hell No moment that has taught them something or changed their perspective on something, or I don't know, anything that made you say, oh hell no. What did you learn from it?
Well, I thought about that because I thought you were going to ask me this as you do your guests. It's when I had that first sales job with the LA Clippers.
Mhm.
And for the first 90 days, I had not made a single sale.
Mm.
And I was a commission only salesperson. And my wife and I recently, and we were newly married, and she was pregnant with our first child and unable to work. And I needed to make some money, right? We got to buy baby formula and diapers and pay the rent. And I was going to quit. And then my wife and I had a very hard conversation one night. And we agreed that I would try one more week. And that was that oh hell no moment. I'm not going to quit. I know I can do this. And frankly, Keisha, if I wouldn't, with my wife's help and her support and encouragement and belief in me, if I wouldn't have gone back to work to try it one more week, I never would have discovered, for me, what turned the key to success in sales. It was that next week where, frankly, the heavens opened, so to speak, and the sales gods were friendly to me and gave me those sales revelations to figure out how to do this job, which then not only led to immediate success, just immediately, and then parlayed itself into starting a business, which I've been now running for almost 27 years. So I'm so glad I stuck with it and I'm so glad that my wife had the trust in me to allow me to do that.
Wow, that is beautiful. I love it. That is why I do this podcast, guys, stories like this. So, Rob, tell us where we can connect with you on social media and where we can purchase your book.
Well, you can purchase my book on Amazon. It's called The Sales Game Changer, How to Become the Salesperson People Love. You can also go through our website, gamefaceinc.com. And I hope all of your listeners will connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time on social media, quite frankly, conversing and sharing ideas with other professionals. So Rob Cornilles on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob. This was awesome.
Thanks, Keisha, so much for having me. It's been a long time coming.